Marvel Studios is finally bringing Secret Wars to the big screen, and if the rumors are even half true, this could be the biggest crossover event in the history of cinema. But here's the thing. Ask 10 Marvel fans why the Beyonder actually did any of this, why he kidnapped half the heroes and villains on Earth and forced them to fight to the death on a patchwork planet for his own amusement. And you'll probably get 10 different answers. And honestly, all 10 of them might be technically correct, because Marvel has changed the official answer to this question at least 3 times over the last 40 years. And the final version, the one currently sitting in canon, is a lot darker than cosmic being gets bored. So today we're answering the question properly. Why did the Beyonders start Secret Wars? Not fan theory, not speculation. We're going issue by issue, era by era, and building the real answer from the ground up. Let's start where it all began. Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars #1, cover dated May 1984, created by writer Jim Shooter and artist Mike Zeck. In this original story, the Beyonder is never even shown in a fixed physical form for most of the run. He's presented as an unseen, nearly omnipotent entity from somewhere entirely outside the Marvel multiverse. He plucks a huge roster of Earth's heroes and villains, Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, Galactus himself, and drops them onto a newly created planet called Battleworld. His pitch to them is simple: fight, and the victors get anything they desire. At this stage, the why Shooter gives readers is almost deliberately thin. The Beyonder is less a character with motivation and more a force of narrative gravity. A cosmic experiment runner who wants to observe how these beings behave when survival and desire are on the line. Then, in 1985, Secret Wars 2 picks up the thread and gives the Beyonder an actual personality for the first time. He takes on a human form and comes to Earth specifically because he wants to understand desire and emotion from the inside, not just observe it from a distance. Over the course of the series, he tries food, relationships, and even attempts to get the mutant Dazzler to fall in love with him. And fails. That failure matters because it's framed as the emotional trigger for his darker turn. Frustrated that he can't achieve the sense of completeness he's chasing, he starts threatening to simply erase the entire multiverse. It's the first time Marvel frames him less as a curious god and more as a being whose power massively outpaces his emotional maturity. Here's where things get messy, though. After Jim Shooter left Marvel, editor and writer Tom DeFalco significantly retooled the character. The nigh-omnipotent cosmic being explanation got quietly walked back. The Beyonder was downgraded and reworked into a rogue, incomplete cosmic cube, tied directly to the Molecule Man's own origin. Eventually, this version evolves into a new entity called Cosmos. The original mystery god framing that powered the entire 1984 event effectively got erased from continuity for years. If you were a kid reading Secret Wars in the 80s and then picked up a handbook a few years later, the character you fell in love with had basically been swapped out from under you. The next major shift didn't come until 2015, and it's the one that changed everything going forward. In Jonathan Hickman's New Avengers issue 33, Marvel reveals that the Beyonder from the original Secret Wars wasn't a unique cosmic entity at all. He was a child, specifically an infant member of an entire race of Beyonders, reality-warping beings who exist outside the multiverse entirely. This retcon reframes the original 1984 event in a completely different light. What looked like a god's grand experiment was, underneath it all, closer to a kid playing with action figures, except the action figures were the Avengers, and the stakes were an entire galaxy. The most complete answer, though, and the one that currently stands as canon, comes from Al Ewing and Javier Rodriguez's Defenders, Beyond #2, published in 2022. In this issue, the Defenders travel back to the earliest point in Marvel's cosmology and come face to face with the actual Beyonder from the original Secret Wars, now speaking candidly about what happened. In his own words, he explains that he was still forming inside a kind of womb space when the accident that created the Molecule Man, Owen Reese's lab experiment gone wrong, accidentally poked a hole into that space. Through that hole, the young Beyonder got his first glimpse of the Marvel Universe. His response was to reach through and grab a handful of people, smashing them together simply because he wanted to learn more, because he loved machines and conflict and didn't yet understand consequence. He flatly tells the Defenders that after the way he came into awareness, he'll always be a little broken, and that they're right to be afraid of what he might do again. That single scene retroactively answers the why better than anything Shooter, DeFalco, or Hickman gave us individually. Secret Wars wasn't a benevolent cosmic experiment, and it wasn't simple boredom. It was closer to an accident of birth, an act committed by a being with God-tier power, and something closer to an infant's understanding of right and wrong. And Defenders Beyond doesn't stop there. It also finally explains where the entire Beyonder race comes from. They're revealed to be the same beings previously called the Omegas, created by the Celestials after the Second Cosmos. The very first version of the multiverse was destroyed in the Celestial War. The Celestials built them as an ultimate failsafe, powerful enough to destroy even their own creators if another cosmic war ever broke out again. When the Second Cosmos eventually died out, the Celestials moved on to build the Third Cosmos, but the Omegas stayed behind in the wreckage, eventually renaming themselves the Beyonders. So, the being who casually ended galaxies during Secret Wars in 1984 is, underneath every layer of retcon, a byproduct of a multiversal weapons program that predates the Marvel Universe most fans actually know. Put those two eras side by side, and the contrast is pretty stark. The 1980s version of the Beyonder is essentially an unknowable god. Mysterious by design, with motivation intentionally left vague because the mystery itself was the appeal. The modern version, especially post-2015, strips almost all of that mystery away and replaces it with something closer to trauma and origin story logic. A wounded, accidentally created being lashing out because that's genuinely all he knew how to do. Older fans who grew up on the unknowable god version sometimes find the newer explanation almost too neat, too therapized, compared to the cosmic horror of not knowing. So here's where we land. From a pure lore perspective, the current standing in-continuity answer is the Defenders, beyond explanation. The Beyonder started Secret Wars because he was an accidentally awakened infant of the Beyonder race, exposed too early to the Marvel Universe through the same accident that created the Molecule Man. And he acted out of curiosity and damage rather than malice or divine judgment. Now here's the personal opinion part, and this one's going to be a little more controversial. I think Marvel actually over-explained a character who worked better as a mystery. The 1984 version terrified readers precisely because you didn't know what he wanted or why. That unknowability was the point. Every retcon since then, however clever, has been in service of making the Beyonder fit neatly into a larger cosmic hierarchy, with the Celestials at the top. It's satisfying from a world-building standpoint, sure, but it also quietly turns one of Marvel's scariest concepts into just another cog in increasingly crowded cosmic org chart. And that's honestly the pattern with most of these mega retcons. Every writer who inherits a character like the Beyonder wants their own fingerprint on the mythology. And the easiest way to do that at Marvel right now is to tie everything back to the Celestials and the multiverse's cyclical destruction. It's become almost a house style at this point. It's not necessarily a bad instinct, but it does mean that the original mystery from 1984 keeps getting chipped away, retcon after retcon, in the name of a bigger, more interconnected universe. If you want to actually read the full arc yourself, start with the original Secret Wars from 1984, then jump to Hickman's New Avengers run, and finish with Defenders Beyond. It's one of the most reworked origin stories in all of comics. And honestly, that's part of why it's still worth talking about 40 years later.